Thanks for joining us today. You've tuned into Business Daily, and I'm Lee Ji-yoon in Seoul. Before we get started, let's first get a quick check on some of the day's highlights. A month has passed since China shocked the world with its surprise yuan devaluations. We look back on how it sent indices swinging and where global markets stand now. More spending is the government's answers to pepping up the Korean economy next year, but with the steep fiscal deficit heading for a 7-year high, we sit down with an expert to see what this all means. But first, we begin with the news of import prices here in Korea, which continue to fall in August, extending their on-year decline to a 36th straight month. According to data from the Bank of Korea, import prices dropped to 13.6% last month from the year before, slightly lower than a 14% decline in July. Prices fell 0.3% in August from the previous month. The drop was attributed to weakening import prices of coal and oil products compared to the previous year, which plunged 41.1% in August from the year before. Export prices also fell 1.5% on year, but gained 0.7% from July on the back of a stronger U.S. dollar against a local currency. Exactly 1 month has passed since China devalued its currency and pushed global markets into panic. And today, our Kim Min-ji takes a look at what kind of impact Beijing's move had and continues to have on global financial markets.
China's currency devaluation last month left much of the global market in shock. It was a move many saw as an indication that China's slowdown was more serious than first thought. Within a 3-day span, the value of its currency depreciated 4.66%, sending China's stock market into meltdown. On August 24th, dubbed Black Monday, the Shanghai Composite closed down 8.5%, the biggest fall in 8 years, sending jitters through global markets. In less than a month, $8 trillion were wiped off indices across the world. That's more than 5 times greater than Korea's GDP. Global research firm Market Economics says 35 benchmark indices all recorded minus rates of profit. The Shenzhen Composite Index posted the sharpest drop, plunging over 17%, followed by the Shanghai Composite. Korea's tech-heavy Kosdaq also fell more than 12%. The meltdown in China also hit global currencies, with the value of Brazil's real and Colombia's peso falling more than 10% and 6% respectively. Although the situation appears to be waning on rising hopes for further economic stimulus measures from the Chinese government, some say it's too early to conclude a recovery. Dominic Rossi, the global chief investment officer at Fidelity Worldwide Investment, says the global economy is bearing the brunt of a third deflationary wave. He said that all emerging market crises start in the foreign exchange markets before spreading to others, such as commodities, debt equity, and finally, the real economy. Kim Min-ji, Business Daily.
Meanwhile, over in the U.S., Apple has unveiled a number of new shiny devices that include upgraded iPhones, a new version of the Apple TV, and even a high-tech pencil. Our Son Jung-in takes us there.
Calling the newly unveiled iPhones the most advanced smartphones in the world, Apple CEO Tim Cook says the latest models may not look a whole lot different from last year's, but underneath, everything has changed.
I am thrilled to show you the newest iPhones.
He demonstrated the features of the iPhone 6s and 6s Plus, including an upgraded 12-megapixel camera that's capable of capturing 4K video and a new capability called 3D Touch, which allows users easier access to different menus and information based on how lightly or firmly the screen is pressed. They will also come in a new rose gold finish targeting female consumers and with a new glass screen that Apple describes as the strongest in the industry. The new phones will hit stores on September 25th in 12 countries with prices the same as the existing iPhone 6 and 6 Plus. Korea was not included in the first group of launch nations. Apple also introduced a brand new version of its best-selling iPad tablet, the iPad Pro. It packs a larger 12.9-inch screen that will be usable with the Apple Pencil and an optional keyboard. In addition, Apple launched a new version of Apple TV and Apple Watch. The TV box has its own app store that can be operated with a touch-sensitive remote control and a microphone that allows it to be voice-operated. Apple's upgraded smartwatch comes with a few new accessories, 2 new metal collars, and a partnership with luxury brand Hermes. 손정인, Business Daily.
Growth in the global smartphone market is expected to slow down next year. Industry tracker TrendForce said the combined shipments of smartphones next year will stand at around 1.3 billion units, logging under 6% growth. Now, that's around 2.5 percentage points lower than this year's estimated rate of expansion. Chinese handset makers, on the other hand, are expected to maintain robust growth, posting at least a 10% on-year hike in shipments, challenging existing smaller brands. 7 out of the top 10 global smartphone makers were Chinese brands in the second quarter. One of the world's best customs e-clearance systems was developed right here in Korea. And just last week, Seoul reached an agreement to export the technology to Cameroon. Now, this is a huge deal worth hundreds of millions of dollars and the largest for Korea's e-government system, which is expected to be a win-win for both countries. Our Eunice Kim has the story.
It was made official on September 4th, closing a deal that would export Korea's one-stop customs service system to Cameroon. With the signing, talks first launched in 2012 came to a close, with Korea clinching a $230 million deal not only to build UNI-PASS for the Central African country over 3 years, but also offer system maintenance and repair for the 12 years following. It's a notable moment for Korea Customs Service, which developed the now 10-year-old system from the ground up that fully automates and computerizes the process from customs clearance and collection to cargo management. Cameroon expects the tool will help it achieve emergent status by 2035 and expand revenue growth.
If we succeed to have UNI-PASS, we are going to have a very easy instrument to collect more. We are going to play a main role in the economy of our country because we are going to facilitate trade.
And the benefits for Korea are expected to be long-term as well.
By exporting this system, Korea can get a head start in setting global standards and create a foothold for IT companies to advance into overseas markets.
In addition, Korean companies doing business in Cameroon will enjoy direct benefits, like shorter customs clearance procedures, opening the path to invigorated import and export. Eunice Kim, Business Daily.
With hopes of propping up the staggering domestic economy, the Korean government announced that it will inject more money into next year's budget. But this decision comes amid growing concerns about the country's fiscal soundness. Take a look.
The Korean government is planning to spend more next year as it struggles to get the domestic economy out of the doldrums, while facing greater instabilities both home and abroad. The Finance Ministry said its 2016 budget plan on the expansionary track, announcing it will boost spending by 3%, while total tax revenue is expected to tick up 2.4%.
Despite internal and external uncertainties, the Korean government will step up its efforts to improve domestic consumption while maintaining growth momentum.
Although next year's budget increase was smaller than expected, it still outstrips revenue growth, pushing the country's debt-to-GDP ratio over the 40% mark for the first time. The Finance Ministry has pledged to improve the country's fiscal balance by 2019 and overhaul government agencies, especially public institutions that are performing below expectations. The question is, will more stimulus over trimming down debt bring about the desired results next year?
And to tell us more about this, we have Professor Oh Jung-gun of Konkuk University joining us in the studio today. Welcome to the program.
Thank you for inviting me.
All right, so how does this budget plan for next year compare to previous ones? It'd be great if you could break down some numbers for us in terms of size and growth.
Well, some experts are worried about the rate of increase in the amount of expenditure for the next year budget, because previously average rate of increase in expenditure were about 5%.
5%.
But next year the rate of increase in the expenditure amount of expenditure is only 3%. But on the other hand, next year Korean economy will growth rate of Korean economy will reduce to about around 3%. Of course, government forecast 3.3%, but many private experts forecast the Korean economy next year will grow even less than 3%. Therefore, we needed to boost our economy. So considering such a situation, a 3% rate of increase in expenditure will be a little bit less than what we need. Therefore, I think some experts are worried about the amount of expenditure, which is not sufficient to boost our economy.
All right, although the increase is smaller than before, it's still an increase, and there are growing concerns about the national debt, which is also growing. How does this compare to other countries' national debt, I guess? Is it serious?
Yeah, I think there is a kind of a dilemma which the Korean government face now, because Korean government, on the one hand, the Korean government must boost our economy, but on the other hand, they must consider our amount of budget. Therefore, I think even though next year Korean economy will growth rate will reduce even less than 3%, but the rate of increase in expenditure is less than the previous one, considering the rising amount of government budget, because of the debt to GDP ratio will increase to more than 40%,
right,
which is the first time in Korean history. Therefore, government must take into account the rising government budget. Therefore, I think the government has some compromise between the need to boost our economy and also the rising amount of government debt.
All right. Well, what are some driving forces behind this growing national debt then?
Well, I think that there are so many reasons, but among them, we can point out two big reasons. One is recently, Korean government introduced a comprehensive welfare system.
Welfare system.
Welfare system. The ratio of welfare expenditure among total government expenditure is more than almost 31%. The biggest part of the expenditure, and also the rate of increase in welfare expenditure is 66.2%, which is almost double total expenditure rate of increase. Therefore, I think that there is a big reason. And also the other one is as a Korean economic growth rate reduces, the amount of revenue also is lower than the rate of increase in expenditure. Therefore, every year government debt is increasing again and again.
All right. Well, although our debt level, the national debt level, is not as serious compared to other countries, I mean, there are still voices calling for tighter spending because we're going through a slowdown, an economic slowdown in China, and we're seeing markets swinging, and all those external uncertainties might be a risky situation for Korea as well.
Yeah, that's right. Well, I think that only simply comparing the statistics of debt to GDP ratio, in Korean one is much lower than the other countries one.
Right.
For instance, Korea is only about 40% next year. But in average ratio of debt to GDP in OECD countries, 110%. Even US more than 110%. Even in Germany also was 70%. So just only comparing simple statistics, Korea seems sound. But considering our pension expenditure to be increased very rapidly because we introduced recently national pension system compared to the other countries. Also, we must take into account the huge amount of cost of unification. Also, we must cope with the sluggish global economic growth. So considering such situation, we think the maximum ratio debt to GDP ratio is about 40%. Therefore, I think Korean government must strengthen the fiscal soundness more.
All right. Although it's a dilemma between reining in debt and, I guess, growing demand over more stimulus, is it time for us to kind of start thinking about raising taxes?
Well, I think the raising tax will be burden to economic growth, as we can see maybe in Japanese case. In Japan, this year, they raised the rate of value-added, so kind of consumption tax, which was a big damage to Japanese economic growth. Therefore, considering the economic growth, raising tax rate will be no good solution. I think that we must broaden our tax base. In fact, in Korea, about 48% of households do not pay any penny to
the government. Yes.
Government. Therefore, I think that means the tax exemption rate is very high compared to the other countries. Therefore, I think we must. It's better to broaden tax base rather than raising tax rate.
All right. Thank you so much for your insight today, Professor.
Welcome.
And that wraps it up for today's edition of Business Daily. Hope you enjoyed it. We'll be back tomorrow at the same time, same place. As always, thanks for watching.